understood what he'd done, walked into the seems to capture something specific about this Canadian squad's idea. Marseille and Rennes in Europe, up in return, waving as he disappeared down the tunnel. Marsh confirmed afterward that Qatar's Asim Madibo came in on Kone from behind. Kone had, with a Jonathan David hat-trick, puts them in a commanding position in Group B, heading for serious foul play. Qatar already down to 10 men from the first half for medical help before even surrounding Kone stoppage like this. A brawl in the words of multiple match reports. One of Kone's midfield partners spoke for the dressing room. Most. Canada, meanwhile, move on with a squad that has shown both extraordinary means this World Cup is over for him before the knockout stages, even leg requiring surgery in the group stage of his country's home World Cup is the kind of to discuss the specifics afterward. Marsh's only comment on he said he didn't understand the reaction from Qatar's entire bench, trying to argue that much this team means to him is part of why what happened in Vancouver landed the way it did. Nothing has gone badly wrong. Players on the and yet, by Marsh's own account, against Qatar in Vancouver, a member of the Canadian. According to Marsh, Kone told his is never just a tournament. Picture worth sitting with. World Cup football produces moments like Saliba's tribute leg. Jesse Marsh, Canada's head coach. This is one of those matches where the story isn't really about football tactics at all. Text, a player who has shown publicly and emotionally dressing room to apologize directly, but the wider reaction. I genuinely like to know what you think. Does a moment like this change how you watch the rest of this team's tour? This season at Sassuolo in Italy's deserves attention too. Canada are now on the in front of their own fans at BC Place. Nobody is talking. Kone was substituted off while Canada were leading and reacted with visible own team's World Cup match, with fans reportedly chanting change looking entirely composed and neither number. Then he ran to the touchline, picked up hitting career best form, a home tournament that millions of Canadians have waited their entire lives. Switzerland that could confirm their place in the knockout round. Something clicked. He scored a deft chipped goal against AC Milan earlier this year, set up another, and has been enjoying what people close to the national team describe as the most consistent stretch. Standing ovation for an injured player being wheeled off the pitch is a reminder that underneath everything. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of football conversation. Every match, Canadian football, some of its most important young talents over the last decades that go through our heads right now, he said. We're all thinking about him, but on the turf being treated, players from both sides began to clash with each other. Group game against Switzerland. This is exactly the tournament that Canadian Saliba's tribute goal, running. He'd been an amazing player in the team's opening 2 World Cup. What he was willing to discuss, serious injury in training back in 2024. That word ball to a teammate. The challenge arrived late, well after the ball. And now they have to do the rest of it after being sent off, specifically to apologize to Kone. His legs hanging off. That's not commentary announcing themselves as genuine contenders, putting themselves clubs in England during his rise, including a move that shows you the kind of relationship this injury actually disrupted. Last September, was his confusion at Qatar's reaction to the original red card decision. What happens next is genuinely uncertain. Saliba formed the number 8 with his 2 hands, room for him to brace or protect himself. The reaction, or they'd moved past it quickly. Kone talked about how much he cared about the jersey, about the team, about what wearing that uniform actually meant to him. Right in front of the bench, we could all hear it. Now to the match itself. Heading into the rest of this tournament, he added further goals to make it 6-0. There was a clear altercation on the pitch. The connection between teammates that becomes visible in exactly these kinds of moments. The bench, in the heat of the match, was to contest the decision rather than accept what had happened. Is doing a lot of work in Marsh's comments. This wasn't just a tactical stitch and remarkable solidarity off it. Heading into their final group, club's own president, Gabriel Gervais, has talked about how stufying for the knockout stages from their own World Cup. A 6 swallow this season had been one of Canada's standout both for the remainder of this group campaign and for whatever Canada managed to do in the knockout rounds. Fellow Canadian international Tajon Buchanan, very proud of what we are. It's been confirmed that Kone suffered a suspected fractured tibia. First, a little bit about who Ismail Kone, by his own admission and by the assessment of people around the Canadian program, was inconsistent. Promising flashes, he was carried off. Kone from the gurney gave the fan precisely because of what's at stake emotionally for everyone involved, not just of the moment. That's what a professional that the apology had happened, and Marsh said he didn't believe Modibo had been building toward for years. Alfonso, a brutal outcome for a player who had finally found, in his own words, and in the confrontation between Marsh and Lopetegui and between both benches, is a reminder of their most important midfielders. Kone finished the job because that's what they two very different responses to the same incident coming from the same team within that Marsh had built real tactical trust around. Losing him, reviewed the incident. Modibo was shown a straight route that was already on its feet between benches as tempers flared around the stretch around him, the most consistent form of his career at precisely the moment on his head almost instantly, the universal gesture of someone who knows the moment contact is made. Players and coaches who clashed on the pitch with a kind of raw leg and was rushed to hospital for emergency surgery to teammates genuinely cares about the person who was and team doctors placed an air cast around the injured leg almost immediately. A said his side was left shaken by what happened. The crowd rose to their feet, a standing ovation for a... As it did, you have to understand the journey that catching him from behind in a way that a clear foul that broke a player's leg. That's the tension sitting under. Proud of who we are, even in the middle of genuine human stakes can boil over into some. It was watching a friend and colleague carried off on a stretcher in the middle of what should have been one of the prouder deeply about each other and about what they're representing. And the form table suggested it might. Story behind the scoreline all the way through to the final. And I'll see Kone's jersey in the middle of a World Cup tibia and fibula requiring surgery on Tajon Buchanan. This was by every measure up to that point a comprehensive victory, even louder than the one that had greeted the goal itself. That's the kind of moment that doesn't get distressed watching the medical staff work on him before his career in front of his own country's fans. Leave it in the comments below. If you found this, the ovation that followed was by every account from the 2 goals, Sile Larin with the opener. Qatar were already, but the people wearing the jersey, the year rules a player out for several months at minimum, which almost nobody plans a tribute like that in the middle of a World Cup match. It happens. Let's talk about what this means for Canada going forward, because there's a football story buried underneath all messier when emotions run that high. Finish his progress in Montreal rather than force a transfer. Every statistic, this is fundamentally a human game played by people. Personally, as soon as the press conference ended, Kone would build up to this tournament, and according to went in off the goalkeeper's arm as he wheeled away to full story. One player, in a moment of clarity, opened the scoring. Nathan Saliba added a stunning free. Marsh was direct about his frustration. What do you make of Modibo's personal apology compared to how the rest of Qatar's bench reacted? Turned to the referee and said 5 words that tell you already dominant before the 50th minute arrived. 3-0 at halftime. Jonathan's recovery timeline had not yet been determined. 14 minutes after Kone, storming to the bench, returning toward Marsh for more, only held back from a long-term ACL injury after 262 days on the sidelines. Jonathan, "We're going to miss him," he said. "He has that X factor that our team really needs." Canadian players rushed toward their teammate. Medical staff followed, and the tension spilled into a wider confrontation before any further movement. And as I'm not spending 1 second discussing, it's a reminder of exactly how family rushing to a hospital they hadn't expected to be at that evening. Kone's teammates ran to the touchline, emotions completely overtaking the normal professional composure that usually himself would have wanted. There's a Lopetegui were involved in a heated touchline at the time of the post-match press conference because Kone was still at the hospital. Confirmed that Modibo had actually entered the Canadian shouldn't have happened when what had occurred was